It's the Boris Dirk podcast. We are back. Today, I'm joined by not only Max, but Andy, who I think has the lead for most guest appearances on the pod. And today, even though Andy said he didn't want credit, he wanted the credit to go to the team. He's a team first dude. We're doing an Andy Gottnick original segment. And Andy's idea was let's talk about last year's this year. So when I say that, I mean we came up with some categories, some special things that happened last season in the NBA. And we're kind of just spitballing, predicting which players, which teams can fill these niches in 2024-25. We've got 10 categories for our trio tonight. I'm going to hit the ball to Max's side of the court for our first category. Who is the Anthony Edwards breakout superstar of this coming season?
So I'm going to leave your favorite guy to you, and I'm just going to go with the layup obvious answer of Victor Wembanyama. I don't even know if he counts as an Anthony Edwards necessarily, but it's quite likely. I think he's already a top 25 player conservatively in the NBA, and most people I've seen, I won't say most, but I've seen people edging him up towards that 15 to 10 range. And I think there's a very good chance he makes an all NBA team this year. The Spurs push for a play-in spot, and we're all talking going into next year saying this could be the year that Vic is a top 5 player in the league already. So I think he's on that sort of rocket ship trajectory. He was better than I expected him to be as a rookie, and he was the best prospect that I've scouted in the 3 years of me in-depth scouting the draft. Not a large sample size, but still. And yeah, so I'll leave you your favorite, and I'm taking Vic.
I'm going to leave you your favorite as well. We're going with Bam Adebayo.
Oh.
I think another year of Jimmy getting older, even more responsibility going to Bam. Our good friend Bill Simmons knows that a quality summer experience at the Olympics leads to great success in that following season. I think we already know the kind of player Bam is, similar to what people were saying about Ant prior to last year. But I think just seeing the development of that three-point shot in the Olympics, Bam Monte coming out there,
His inside the arc shooting took a step in that round one versus Boston. Like the turnaround jumpers, putting the guy on his back and just finding ways to create space. It's like not the stuff that made Bam the guy we love. And the fact that he's even added to his scoring bag in a season that felt like a throwaway for the Heat without Jimmy in that round one. And even with Jimmy, I mean, this year's Celtics team was probably too much for them. I like the pick. I'm slightly offended by your implication that Bam wasn't already a superstar. I mean, dude got the key to Miami-Dade County today, so I had Bam as a top 10 guy like 2 years ago. But I do understand that he doesn't have typical superstar qualities, the flashy scoring. He even like it took him a couple of years to be the box score monster that he's become today. But he'll forever have those blue collar role player traits that make him one of the more beloved stars in the league. Andy, thank you for leaving me my guy. I'm going with the man who I think is becoming the new sort of Jamal Murray elite guard playoff riser, and that is Tyrese Maxey, who 2 years ago I think it was their round one, was it maybe round two against the Heat, was pretty up and down. I was just looking at his box scores. He had like a couple like 4 for 16, like poor, James Harden birthday games, and just took a massive, massive step as a big game player this last season in that round one versus the Knicks. We've already talked about it a lot. I had his stats pulled up. Let me just bring them back. I mean, versus the Knicks, 6 games, 45 minutes per game, 29.8 points, 5.2 rebounds, 6.8 assists, a steal. And he did it on 48, 40, 89 shooting, 60% true shooting, and the eye test was just off the charts. Like he hit some big boy shots in that series to buoy the Sixers during the moping of Joel Embiid and just the general lack of depth that they had outside those two guys.
Yeah.
I think the next step for Maxey to really become like a premier, top 10 player in the league, which I truly think he's capable of, is the point guard stuff, like the creating for other people. I like Maxey more than Halliburton, but that is like the edge that Halliburton has over Maxey. And I think they're just two guys from a similar generation who will be linked and compared over the next couple of years. If Maxey can just add a little bit as a passer and creator for others, I think he truly could be on his way to like second team all NBA type status. His shooting off the dribble from three is ridiculous. His touch when he's moving at maximum speed is very rare. And he's right up there with Ja at this point in terms of just the craziest blurs with the ball in his hand that the world has to offer. So yeah,
Yeah.
see. Next year's Anthony Edwards.
Yeah, I was thinking Maxi as well. It was him and Vic for my top spot. I considered throwing Paolo in there as well, though I think he's about a year away from that step. He's probably like Anthony Edwards in 2 years might be Paolo. But Maxi, I'm slowly going through my preseason player rankings for this year, and I've tentatively got him at 21. And I think by the end of next year, he could definitely be much closer to 10, sort of in that Donovan Mitchell type tier. Mitchell coming off a great year as well. But yeah, aside from the eye test, I can give you the fan rooting against him test. And I was terrified of Tyrese Maxey every single time he was open. And he could get himself open at any point because he's the fastest guy with the ball in his hands in the league, probably. It's him or De'Aaron Fox. And he also competed defensively in that first round series. Like the Knicks were trying hard to hunt him with Brunson and all these other guys. And yeah, Brunson ended that series, I think, with 4 straight 40-point games, but that wasn't Maxi's fault. Like Maxi was competing. He's not a liability on that end in the way that you brought up Halliburton, someone like Halliburton is. So yeah, I see breakout season coming for Maxi. He's already broken out, but like to the top 10.
Category 2, the Thunder category, which we described as the 1 year ahead of schedule team. Now, the Thunder went from barely missing the playoffs to the 1 seed in the West, losing round 2 to the eventual finals bound Dallas Mavericks. That's really rare, like especially in the West. I don't think there's a single team in the league that's going to go from out of the playoff picture to a 1 seed this year. But still, who do you guys think is the 1 year ahead of schedule team? Max?
So I have 2 names here, and neither of them I think are like pushing for the conference finals, but I think just in terms of could make a bigger leap than people expect. The first is the Orlando Magic, and there's a pretty strong consensus top 4 in the East of Boston, New York, Philly, and Milwaukee. I think it's quite possible that Orlando could crash that second round, let's say, and really make a bigger step than people think and have a sort of surprising first round victory. I think they are a good bet to have the best defense in the East. I think they're sort of like in a top 3 elite defenses, I'd say, of them and Boston, and then potentially New York, depending on how the center situation shakes out. But I can see them making a bigger leap than expected, particularly if Paulo and Franz's shot creation and shot making, particularly 3-point shooting, come around, particularly with the shooting they added in the offseason of KCP, drafting Tristan da Silva, who might come up in a later category, and some of the other moves they've made around the margins of the roster. So them I could see. And the other name I wanted to throw out, I'm not positive they'll make the playoffs, but they could just make a bigger competitive leap than people are expecting, is the Houston Rockets.
Yeah, let me go on Houston and then we'll pass it over to Coach God. If we have religious listeners, they're not going to like that. I just want to say, I don't think the Rockets are a playoff team either. I'm not willing to get there, but they're just a candidate. Just because of the depth of options and like how many guys they have on their roster right now who could legitimately break out and pop in a major way. Sort of like my fantasy football team, no top end talent, but a lot of guys who could get there. A lot of Drake Londons in Houston right now. And you've got like the vet core, the maturity, the adults in the room with Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks, if you consider him an adult in the room. And just as we've listed a couple of times now, because we kind of obsess over these young cores and we studied a couple of these guys for their drafts, but like one of Jalen Green, Amen Thompson, Reed Shepard, Jabari Smith, Şengün, obviously. Shepard's going to need a couple of years, but Cam Whitmore, Tari Eason, like one of these guys, 2 of these guys could easily become all-stars. Şengün's already at that level. This Rockets team has as much talent as almost anybody in the league right now. The question is, can Ime Udoka put it together in time for them to be, quote, a year ahead of schedule?
Yeah, quickly on the Rockets, they had the number 10 defense in the NBA last year. And with another year under Ime Udoka, the fact that their team is so damn young, you'd think all, with the exception of Fred VanVleet, you'd think all of, Cam Whitmore, Amen Thompson, Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, Reed Shepard coming in, Tari Eason, all those guys will continue to improve on defense. And if you have that number 10 defense becomes more like a 6, 7, or 8, and then their problem is they were the 20th offense in the league. So if that gets more towards league average, then you're looking at, a league average offense and a top 7 or 8 defense. That's a strong profile for a team. And they actually had a better net rating last year than the Lakers did, but the Lakers just managed to scratch their way into the playoffs through LeBron's clutch majesty. But yeah, over to you, Andy.
Love the 2 picks. You guys are leaving me in a tough place here, but I did have a lot of
Steven
fun.
Adams is 31 years old. He's only 31. He's a rocket. Charles Barkley doesn't know he's a rocket if you listen to the latest Simmons episode. But I don't know. Steven Adams could get them over the playoff hump. Back to Andy. Get your composure back.
I'm back. I do want to call out Max listing the top 4 in the East in the specific way that he did. That'll come back later. Don't worry. We're going to go with a fun pick here. A pick that should be as a honorable mention. We're going with the Toronto Raptors. And I'm not taking them as a team that's going to be like the OKC Thunder. They're not going from whatever to the 1 seed. But I do like them making a small improvement. And Max, when you were listing what you were about to say about Houston, I was like, are you about to steal my team here? But I see Scotty taking another step. I see Quickly taking another step. The Dick is in town. And we saw that RJ learned how to shoot threes in this past Olympics. And I think there's a bunch of talent there. Does it work? Who knows? But I'm taking a bet on this team making a jump. Maybe it's 6 seed. Maybe it's win a playing game and then get the gentleman sweep in the first round. But I'm buying stock.
RJ Barrett in his 32 games as a Toronto Raptor, 22 points, 6.4 rebounds, 4 assists, almost a 1.5 assist to turnover ratio. And he did it on 55-39 shooting.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean the from the field was just crazy for him because he's always been a guy who hovers around 40% from the field, and the shot selection has always been a bit frustrating. Max knows all too well, but for him to shoot 55% from the field and shoot threes that well, taking 4 a game. And then he's always been solid on the boards and always been at least average defensively with like some flashes of even better. I like the Toronto pick. They didn't cross my mind. This is why he is the leading guest appearer on the Boristurk podcast.
RJ Barrett, 44% 3-point shooter in the Olympics this summer too. I'm telling you, it looked good too. They weren't just like random makes. It looked good.
I remember watching RJ rip the US apart as like a teenager in like 18 or 17 U Olympics, and just thinking he was going to be a legitimate all NBA player. His growth stagnated a little bit. Who knows? Maybe Masai Ujiri and their coach's name that I'm not going to try to pronounce right now. Maybe these guys can get him to the place that he looked like he could get when he was a prospect at Duke. The Derrick Lively Award for rookie who contributes deep into the playoffs. I originally wrote deep into the playoffs. I think that's a little aggressive. Only a couple teams make it deep into the playoffs. So how about just a rookie who gives a team real winning minutes in the playoffs? Who you guys got?
This is really a bet on the team and the fit that he has on that team. I'm going Jaylen Tyson, the Cleveland Cavaliers. Love the size. That team is needing that 5th starter, and in reality, we got to get rid of Jarrett, but that's a whole other story. So 2 other starters. But I can see Jaylen making a huge defensive stop in the playoffs, playing real 4th quarter minutes. If he figures out how to be more of a volume 3-point shooter, I think the role is 100% there for him. But I think playing off of Garland, playing off of Mitchell, playing off of a much improved Evan Mobley, another guy who we could have brought up for breakout superstar. But I could definitely see Tyson having a big role for them this year.
He was on my list. He was basically second on my list. That's why I let you go first. I could not understand why Jaylen Tyson was being mocked as low as he was throughout the draft process. I'll keep it brief since I know not all of our listeners are super plugged into the draft, but this guy was a 3-level scorer at Cal, shot threes well, got to the mid-range, got to the basket, could elevate for impressive athletic finishes at times, though he's not like a, game-breaking athlete. Good passer. And then I learned, because I only watched him last year, I learned that before, when he was at Texas Tech, he was a defensive specialist, and the question about him was his offense. So all that into account, you've got a 3-and-D guy with 3-level scoring potential at 6'6", strong-bodied as well. He can absolutely, I think, will start for the Cavs at some point, maybe not this year, but in his in the next couple years will be starting at the 3 for them. And I could see him absolutely getting big minutes for them as they get into the playoffs. He's not going to be someone who can be played off the floor for shooting or for defense or anything like that. He's mature as well. He's 21 years old. He's ready to contribute. So I think that is a perfect pick. Drew, do you have anything else to say on Tyson? Otherwise, I can give a guy.
You said it all. I also had Tyson as one of the two guys I put down here. What I'll just add is it looks like Isaac Okoro might not be a Cleveland Cavalier this year. Their wing room has always been a bit of an issue. They've got really talented guards and really talented bigs. And obviously, we loved the Strus acquisition last year. But yeah, Okoro could be gone. Niang is not the most consistent playoff option at that position. Sam Merrill, we've seen players like Sam Merrill disappear in the playoffs a little bit, like when it's just a 3-point shot or nothing. Tyson offers them definitely like a little bit more offensive versatility than they've had at that position. And I think there's just a world where he is playing closing minutes for them in like round 1 of the playoffs.
Yeah. All right. I have two other names. I mentioned Tristan da Silva when I was talking about Orlando. He's another guy who's just ready made to play. He's 23 years old, so he's old for a rookie, but one of the best shooters in the draft, a really smart player, good playmaker off, like, moving the ball and also off drives somewhat. And sometimes maligned for his defense. I think his defense is pretty good, especially his team defense. Maybe his individual on the ball isn't great, but lucky for him, he's playing on one of the best defensive teams in the NBA in Orlando, and they need shooting desperately. So he's going to be able to play with any combination of their best players. Like you could theoretically play, I think, him, Franz Paolo, and Jonathan Isaac all together, and it would work because he can like connect and shoot. But you could play him with any combination of like their best and most interesting players, and he'll make it work. He's just someone who's versatile and just has such a well-rounded skill set that he'll fit into a playoff rotation immediately.
They look so deep right now that it's hard for me to find him minutes, but he's so good and ready made as like a winning contributor that surely they can find him 10 minutes in a playoff game. And if he's making threes, he'll play even more than that.
Yeah, and the second guy who will have a ton of minutes and is kind of might be the winner by default of this category is Zach Edey. He very well may end up starting most of the Grizzlies games this year as their 5. It's going to be kind of him or Brandon Clark, depending on the matchup they're going against. Maybe sprinkle a little Santi Aldama in there. But I just can't wait to see what he looks like in the NBA. He is the opposite of Tristan da Silva in terms of being like super versatile and easy to see exactly how they fit into the playoffs right now. But he is 7'4", 7'10" wingspan, is going to enter the league as the biggest player that we've seen since Yao Ming, and with the exception of Boban Marjanovic. And he's going to get a ton of minutes for a Grizzlies team that has a good chance to be a top 4 or 5 team in the league, or in the West. Sorry.
He very well might be bigger than Boban. I haven't done the comparison. Last name I'll throw in the hat here is Dalton Knecht, who legitimately could be the Lakers' 6th man by season's end. Like, it's not out of the cards. I'm not going to predict it here. I'm just going to do the softest podcaster thing you can do and say it's a possibility. Outside of LeBron and AD, you just need guys that defenses have to respect on some level. And throughout his time in LA, Jared Vanderbilt struggled to give them that on offense, even with the defense and the rebounding, which opens up an opportunity for Dalton Knecht, who is a laser from 3, and has some real strength and athleticism and elevation at the rim when he can get there, as we've talked about. I don't think his defense is going to be a disaster. He had such a crazy usage rate at Tennessee that he often looked kind of lost on defense, but I think he was just gassed and also conserving energy to be the star epicenter of their offense that they needed. And I also think Dalton Knecht is just like a bad motherfucker who's not going to be scared to play in LA and like, deal with LeBron. So I think he could get them some buckets in the playoffs right now.
You could be scared to committing to him being 6th man, but fourth quarter in that first round playoff series against Denver or OKC, he's finishing that game. He's going to,
yeah.
LeBron's going to tell him, stand in the corner, make a 3. He's going to do it. Other guys won't. He'll be finishing games. And
I'm a blog boy maniac who thinks he should probably already be playing over D'Lo, but I'm a D'Lo hater. I'm unabashed about it. And later we're going to talk about player pods. I thought about D'Lo for that category. Moving forward, let's talk the Dallas Mavericks award for the team that goes from league average one year to finals appearance the next. Max, tee us off.
Yeah, I don't know if these guys were exactly league average. and they might fit into the next category as well.
And he's praying like, do not take his guy off
I
the
have a good
board.
pick here. I have a good pick here.
I have a hard time believing that you would pick the Phoenix Suns.
Going mute. I'm going mute.
Wow.
Yeah, it feels unlikely just with how their this year went and the embarrassing fashion in which they were swept by Minnesota after many, including me, picked them to beat Minnesota in the first round. I don't, maybe it's just for the like afterglow from watching Durant and Booker play for Team USA. And they did make some like solid offseason acquisitions in terms of Tyus Jones. They still don't have a center that I trust, but I don't know. Like they weren't that far off from being a 4 or 5 seed last year if they get some matchups that go their way. It's hard to find a team that can go from like the 8-9 seed realm to making the finals, but they do have the top end talent if some of their role players hit, and Budenholzer is elite at squeezing regular season wins out of a team. So if they go into the playoffs, it's like a 2, 3, or 4 seed instead of a 6 or 7 seed. That can make a big difference for them. And yeah, they were the only team I thought that might fit this category.
Listen, I'm a Suns hater. We know it here. Watching Booker do what he did this summer pulled me in enough to make me come off of mute here. The "I'll do it" phrase is what I've lived by the last few months. It's incredible.
Put that on the coach board.
Coach board, it's on the computer board, it's on the walls, it's everywhere. I like it, and I agree with you with it being really hard to find a team that'll go from that 8-9 moving up there. Realistically, it probably won't happen. But I can't buy in there.
And before he goes, can I just say I can't believe the Suns waived EJ Liddell and you still picked them for this category. And if we're talking Devin Booker, I'll do it. Here's what I'll do. I'll say I'm gonna push back a little bit on this Phoenix top end talent thing. I'm just not sure Kevin Durant is still at that level. And he looked amazing in Paris because he was the third option at best. And he's amazing in that role, playing off ball, hitting spot up shots. He's still one of the best spot up guys in the league, like regardless of height. Obviously, it helps that he's 7 feet tall and can shoot over pretty much anyone not named Victor. I love Devin Booker and I still love watching Kevin Durant, but I just think the bar is so high to be like a number one or number two on a finals team. And I'm not convinced that KD is still at that level. I'm higher on Booker. I think
Yeah.
Phoenix is Booker's team. But I do think they got better this year. I love the
I think
Tyus Jones acquisition. I love Monte Morris, Mason Plumlee. Like they just got some adults in the room and a couple more straws to stir the drink.
so. First of all, I think I had amnesia triggered by a traumatic event because I forgot that they cut EJ Liddell, and I'm upset again. Uh, Second thing is funny enough for the Dallas Mavericks category of an average team team that goes from average to the finals. Last year, the team with the 15th best net rating in the NBA was the Dallas Mavericks. So interesting little stat factoid.
Nice little category, Drew. Yeah, and to play devil's advocate to what I just said, Grayson Allen was out of that Wolves series early with an injury. He had an incredible year, absolute lights out all world shooter last year, and maybe they lose in 6 to the Wolves if Grayson's healthy. And it feels a little bit different. They definitely have more talent than a lot of teams in that net rating ballpark. So
Yeah.
I don't hate the pick. I just wanted to push back. All right, Andy, who you got?
All right, boring pick, we're going Cleveland. Spicy pick, we're going New Orleans Pelicans.
Oh,
We're going Pelicans because
Oh my
I
God.
I was on Drew's side for the Cade pick, and I got to come to Max's side for the Pelicans pick. Finished what in the play-in last year, coming back. If we get a healthy Zion, again, he could have been in that Ant category there. Healthy Zion, Ingram figures out how to play next to Zion. DeJounte coming into play there. We all know here that Trey Murphy is maybe the second best player on that team. Herb Jones guarding guys. CJ plays off the bench a little bit too. Like, this is a team that if they get a good break in the playoffs, seeding wise, matchup wise, and maybe they win a few more games to move up to that 4 seed, I could see them. It would all have to go great, just like it did for Dallas, but this could be that kind of team.
so I think where the similarities with Dallas continue is their roster is clearly not a roster that makes sense going into the year. And they're going to need deadline moves like Dallas had last year to be able to make that kind of run. I think they have their 2, 3, 4 of the future set, in my opinion, in Herb, Trey, and Zion. Like that is a 2, 3, and 4 that can win in the playoffs. I think it's very high level. It's got playmaking, scoring, shooting, defense. You need all that. I do not love the DeJounte Murray acquisition as their one, particularly combined with the fact that they still have Brandon Ingram on their team. So if they can find a way to, say, trade Brandon Ingram for Jared Allen or something where they save their 5 spot, which they currently do not have a starting caliber center on the team, and they clear up some of that like ball dominance issues that they currently have with BI, DeJounte, Zion, and CJ all on the same team, then I can see it. But I am more optimistic about Zion going into the season than I have any of the previous seasons.
Just some more Dallas comparison here. Making that trade similar to PJ Washington coming over to Dallas.
That the deadline acquisitions were huge. There, like I don't think Dallas gets there without the contributions from Gafford and PJ. Picture this though. Derrick Lively plays an incredible first half of the season. He's everything he looked like in the playoffs and more. And Dallas says, maybe we don't need to pay big money to 2 centers. You know what, Daniel? You're going to New Orleans. Let's get, I don't know, Jose Alvarado, Luka's backup point guard, something. I don't think that's enough for Gafford, but New Orleans has a lot of pieces they could go trade for a center. And they're going to have to because Yves Messi is not ready to be a starting center. I actually don't even think he's close to ready.
I don't know if he'll ever be.
And I'm also lower on the Pelicans, but listen, man, Zion is like the toxic relationship. I can't talk any more of my friends off the Zion bandwagon. Just like, oh, he texted me back. He's looking better on the Great Wall of China. If you look from this angle, like I think he's actually in shape this time. Come on, dude. People show you who they are. Move the hell on. Okay, my Mavs of this year. I put down the zombie Miami Heat.
Mm.
Just as like a finals team, because I was also kind of thinking we have a category for the Wolves of this year, like the playoff beast hiding in plain sight. But in a way, the Mavs were hiding in plain sight a little bit as well. Just because they have an all world, top 5 guy in Luka, might be top 3, might be top 2 right now. I'm a little bit lower on the Luka whining experience and the body language and the inconsistent defense, but the bottom line is Luka drags your team deep in the playoffs when he gets into the tournament. And so I'm just kind of thinking, yeah, it might just be the same old Heat. Maybe Jimmy Butler was hurt against Boston, and the second they're healthy again, they're right back in the mix and able to sort of outwill a more talented team in the playoffs and suddenly make another patented Eric Spoelstra run. I think Jimmy's getting older and they just don't have the depth they had a couple years ago. But like, come on, dude, this team won the first 3 games in that Boston series and nothing made sense except for the fact that Heat culture is real and in the air. And you know what? They went out into the free agent market and they made a massive signing. Welcome to Miami, Alec Burks, the pride of New York. But yeah, there's nothing new in Miami, and maybe that's why they're gonna make it back to the finals because put those guys on an island and they find a way.
Yeah.
All right. Like I just mentioned, the Wolves category for playoff beast hiding in plain sight. Max, tell me why this is not the Memphis Grizzlies.
I don't know if the Memphis Grizzlies are hiding, but I have them coming up in another category.
There goes the momentum. All right, pot's cooked. Go on.
We were so hot.
This year's Minnesota Timberwolves are the Milwaukee Bucks. Think about it. Timberwolves, they made a big offseason acquisition, mortgaged their entire future to get Rudy Gobert. And by any metric, it was a disappointment in year 1. And they went out in the first round meekly. Milwaukee Bucks mortgaged what was left of their future to get Damian Lillard. He had an underwhelming season, I'd say, though he did play very well in the playoffs before he got hurt and Giannis was hurt. And overall, it was about the most disappointing 3 seed I've ever seen. This year, maybe they can recapture some of what the Wolves did, where the Wolves, they had the disappointing year, then they came back. Suddenly, they were the best defense in the league. They pushed for the number 1 seed in the West, and they made it all the way to the conference finals. This year, it would be the opposite for Milwaukee, but they capture some of what we thought they would have in terms of their offensive firepower, just how unstoppable of a 2-man game that would be with Damon Giannis, and how unstoppable of just an offensive unit it would be with Middleton and Lopez spacing. I like some of their minimum pickups as well with Gary Trent and some of the other guys they picked up. So Milwaukee Bucks would be my pick for let's not write these guys off too soon after mortgaging their entire future for a star.
Max, I am stunned right now. This was my team, and I know that I thought that we were thinking different about this team. They're my finals pick. I'll say it now. I'll say it early. Like, I think Milwaukee's going to the finals. Fully bought in. Love the Gary Trent signing. I think it fits perfectly there. Completely love the pick. I think that they're hiding in plain sight. People are just writing them off. People are so excited about the Knicks offseason, Philadelphia's offseason, Boston's coming back. I'm putting them at the 2 seed heading into the playoffs this year, and they're going to beat Boston in a game 7. Giannis goes back in there, brings it home. Love the pick.
Wow.
Oh yeah, I put down the Grizzlies. Just because I feel like a lot of people have forgotten how good they are in the playoffs, how elite Ja can be matched up against any guard in the league. And I think Jaren Jackson has become almost as underrated as Desmond Bane. And I think they found a closing wing slash guard in Vince Williams Jr., who was able to emerge from the ashes in a lost season of injuries and suspensions and all of it. So yeah, I just think the Grizzlies are going to be back with a vengeance. You mentioned them a little bit with Edie. They have the depth, they have some ancillary pieces, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Grizzlies make a deep run, depending on matchups. All right,
Yep.
let's steamroll through these last few. The Paul George Award for the next player podcast. I really struggled with this one. I'm not sure if social media has just fried my brain and I have no imagination anymore, but I couldn't think of any that made a ton of sense. So I kind of just did some wishful thinking. I've got three names that are going to blow your mind, but I'll go last. Max, who you got?
There's been a lot of talk in the social media sphere and the pod sphere these last few days about Rudy Gobert, about how he's not meant to be on the court in the playoffs. He's the most overrated defensive player of the year winner of all time. Rudy, it's time to defend yourself, damn it. Start your own pod. It can be bilingual. You can go French and
Yep.
English, get all the guests you want. Defend yourself from this, the brotherhood of the NBA, which seems to its only mission is to relentlessly shit on all of your accomplishments. Defend yourself, get out there, pick up a mic, and yeah, start the Rudy pod. That's all I got to say.
It crossed my mind. I had him down. And what Serge Ibaka had his YouTube series, How Hungry Are You? Rudy could do like a How Resentful Are You kind of thing. I think that
Yeah.
could be a hit. What a run for this guy. I don't know if the vitriol started before he put his COVID hands all over the mic, but yeah, one of one NBA storyline. That just so many players dislike this guy. I've got some of my favorite NBA Twitter warriors like Tony Jones fighting their asses off for him in the comment section because Rudy has had an incredible career, four-time Defensive Player of the Year. After everyone labeled the Minnesota's trade for him a huge disaster, like they looked like the best team in the playoffs for a couple weeks. Obviously, I don't know. I just think what they did in the West is more impressive than the first half of Boston's run. Rudy found a way to really help a team in the playoffs last year after all the shit talk. But I agree with you. It'd be fascinating to hear his perspective. But something tells me he would make it all even worse.
Yeah.
Andy.
I have 3 names. I'll list them all. The chalk pick, who I thought might have had his already, but he doesn't. It looks like Chet, I think, could
Mm.
do it with these. He's been a guest on a bunch of pods lately. I think he has a really cool perspective. DeJounte Murray, I want to hear his story about Atlanta. I want to hear him, the counter pod to Trey's pod, a little bit of pod beef. We love it here. My fun pick is Colin Sexton. I want to hear what Colin Sexton has to say. I want to hear about
Okay.
his college days. I want to hear about Colin Sexton's life in Cleveland, Colin Sexton's life in Utah now. But my real pick is DeJounte. I want to hear the DeJounte Trey beef.
Okay. The
Okay.
po- the podcast I actually want more than anyone who's ever walked this earth is the Kawhi Leonard podcast. It would never happen. Like you would literally need to inject him with the truth serum they use in the Meet the Fockers movie to get Ben Stiller's character to say some crazy shit at like the Tiki Bar, if I
Yeah.
remember correctly. Kawhi would never do it, but if he did, it would just be instant virality. Evan Fournier, could we get our first Europod? He just dropped the selfie video of him arriving in Greece to join Olympiacos, and the crowd is bonkers behind him. And I just imagine a funny world where Evan Fournier contaminates the EuroLeague with NBA player pod culture, and probably rants about how he was kicking Brunson's ass in practice one-on-one. Like Fournier's, there's an ocean between us and Fournier now, so he might start talking his shit. And then, you know what? I know we're all wondering, like, what happened to Alexei Pokusevsky? Give the man a pod. I mean, the Poku story needs to be told. He should be the executive producer. The talent is still there. I mean, they're just, is there a better 7-foot passer in the league who's under 250 pounds? I don't think so. But it's unclear why Alexei Pokusevsky is not featured in like the Detroit Pistons rotation at this point. I'm obviously kidding, but Poku has a major swag that I'd like to hear on the air.
Unfortunately, the player most likely to get a pod is probably Ben Simmons, and we should fold the entire industry if he does.
I'm signing off.
The Jayson Tatum / Rudy Gobert award for a great season that somehow culminates in more slander than ever.
I have two names, but I'll save one just in case it doesn't get said by someone else. Joel Embiid. I could see this being the year that Philly takes a big step forward with the offseason additions that they've made. Paul George, Gershon Yabusele should probably not be the second name I mentioned, but he's the second one who comes to my head. Caleb Martin. But I could see them going deeper than they ever have, but it being in large part due to the emergence of Tyrese Maxey as a rising star / potential superstar, and Paul George being back there, perhaps standing out more as a star in the East, which doesn't have as deep talent as the West does. I could see the Sixers making it to the conference finals for the first time in Joel Embiid's tenure there, but that in large part being due to the genius of Nick Nurse and the postseason exploits of Paul George and Tyrese Maxey, to the point that people start lobbing the sort of Tatum criticism at him of like, you're not pulling your weight and you're being carried in a way similar to what Tatum faced this year. So Embiid was the first name that came to mind for me.
I'm so glad that we were able to make up with that take, Max. I actually have his teammate Paul George on here as well.
Love it. Love it.
I just see it the exact way that you said it. Like, if there's a way where they go further, they have a better record, they make it further in the playoffs, but then they fall short, it's going to be the same old talk, which we will say the exact same thing, that why does it matter how far they went this time? They still can't do it, and the slander will keep coming their way. Absolutely love it. I think Maxey is the only guy that's safe on that team right now, universally, for the impending second round loss or maybe conference finals loss for them.
Maybe first round.
I put down in my notes that Joel Embiid is a cop-out answer for this one, just because he had another insane regular season. I guess he was hurt a lot of this one, but when healthy, played at an MVP level once again, but just has the worst juju based on his, emotional performance versus the Knicks, and then his inconsistency in the Olympics, which culminated in a really strong performance. And I actually really respect that he kept fighting after how rough it was the first couple of weeks for Joel Embiid on Team USA. Like, he still ended up giving them stuff deep into the tournament. The guy, what I had down for this category, one, Doc Rivers. Let's go, coach. Throw some spice in there. Because I think, as much as I still believe in Giannis, as much as I hope as I have for a Dame resurgence, and as much as I like the Gary Trent acquisition, and the Thanasis Antetokounmpo release, gonna miss the culture though. I just think I really believe in all three of Boston, New York, and Philly, and I think there's a world where the Bucks lose from Milwaukee's perspective too early, whether it's the conference finals or the round before that. And I don't think it's the biggest indictment on Doc Rivers, who has had some rough playoff outs in the past. And obviously all the meme makers are just waiting for Doc Rivers to to really blow it as the coach of the Milwaukee Bucks with his first full season. And so I'm ready for people to slander Doc Rivers, and it might be the first time in a while that I'm like, I'm not quite sure that there was much he could do with the roster he had to work with. The other name I put down real quick is Luka. I just think we're getting to the point where, let's see, he was drafted in 2018. I think he's going into his year 6 or 7 season. I'm not going to do the math because that always ruins my brain. Year 6 for Luka. And somehow this man is 25 years old, even though he looks like a 32-year-old virtuoso who just got back from war. I think we're just getting to the point where people might take Luka for granted because the internet moves so quickly. I mean, Donald Trump got shot like 7 weeks ago, and I don't even see that much about it. Luka just got to the finals, and if the Mavs underperform next year and Luka's body language is still, a little bit disappointing and the defense isn't what it needs to be, I could easily see the internet turning on Luka again.
But Tatum could be a back-to-back winner, by the way. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
I'm not ready.
All right. The Warriors award for everyone assumes they're a playoff team. I mean, I'll speak for myself. I had the Warriors, I think, as the 5 seed going into last year. But they are not. I put down the New Orleans Pelicans for this spot. I just think they are good, not great. And that's a bad place to be, especially in this insanely stacked West.
I disagree with New Orleans just because I don't know if everyone thinks they're a playoff team. I definitely
Yeah,
am not sure
that's
they're a
fair.
playoff team.
That's fair. I think I just was remembering all the like gassing up they got right after the DeJounte trade. But obviously, those are just like the New Orleans fans coming in to say, like, we're on our way to a conference finals. I just don't trust Zion to be healthy for more than 60 games in a regular season. And DeJounte is a ball dominant guy who is not going to love the idea of adapting to a majority point Zion world, which I do think, despite my Zion questions, is still the best iteration of a Zion New Orleans Pelicans.
Yeah. I was going back and forth between two East teams for this one. I'm still not sure where I want to plant my flag, but I would not be surprised if one of the Pacers or the Heat misses the playoffs this year. Um, I think everyone's kind of penciled in the top 8 of the East to be the same 8 teams that it was last year, but typically there's like some sort of surprise, like maybe the Hawks creep back in there. Their team might make a little bit more sense, getting rid of DeJounte and getting some more like defensive pieces around Trey, plus another leap year from Jalen Johnson, perhaps. So I could see the Hawks maybe making some noise. Maybe Andy's Toronto Raptors take comes to fruition and they make a push into the playoffs. So I think the two weakest teams from that top 8 in the East are Indy and Miami. Indy, I think, is still going to be a really good regular season team just because their offense is such a regular season machine. But I could see one of them falling out.
The team that I have, this might be not a playoff team that people think, but the LA Clippers is where I have it with this one. Losing Paul George is very obvious. Older Kawhi, older James Harden. I have not done my playoff predictions yet for this season, but I'm probably going to keep them out of it. Maybe they're a play-in team. I do like the Chris Dunn pickup. I think he's a really good defender for them, can play a lot for them there, but this team is not a playoff team.
I just wasn't in the mood to dunk on the Clippers right now, but I agree with you. God, it would be fun if Kawhi just comes back after the Team USA departure and just shows us something we aren't expecting. Like, it would be so sick. Forget the playoffs. If Kawhi just dragged the Clippers to 50 wins this year, it might be one of the second coolest thing he's done in his career. But
Yeah.
we can't trust Kawhi durability. All right. The Clippers award for the team that will blow up after this season. I have 5 different teams down there. We got a lot of teams at inflection points right now in the league. But Max, start us off. Let's start crossing names off my list.
I love that you said you weren't in the mood to dunk on the Clippers, then immediately we went to this
yeah,
category.
no, the Clippers are a category. They're not a current team we're gonna dunk on. It's
Yeah.
over. Sorry, Steve.
So
I don't care about your wall.
if the Phoenix Suns are not a contender hiding in plain sight, they could be the winner of this Clippers award. So I might be playing both sides a little bit here, but I'm gonna throw the Phoenix Suns out there.
God, you absolute fence sitter. Oh my God.
I
All right.
also have the Phoenix Suns. So that makes my life a lot easier.
Yeah,
So
I would throw Cleveland in the mix too. Like I don't know if they're gonna blow up the whole foundation, but they're definitely 3 seasons of this two small guards and two bigs who can't shoot. Like I kind of feel like I know how it's gonna go. Maybe Kenny Atkinson can work some magic, or Evan Mobley takes a big offensive leap. But if we run into the same issue again, where they probably lose in the first round, I would say maybe the second round, and lo and behold, their two small guards can't guard anyone, and their two bigs can't punish anyone offensively. I could see them doing a major shakeup there.
I wonder if the new coach will give them an extra year, but I can definitely see that if it's early.
Yeah.
Loss.
Great call. Somehow I had 5 teams listed and they weren't one of them, but I totally agree. The Lakers, LeBron's on a 1-year contract. He
Yeah.
got Bronny into the league. Daddy might not be home next year. The Warriors, Steph is also on a 1-year deal, and like we can only do so many more summers of Charlotte Hornets Steph memes as the Warriors fail to get him back into a real playoff contention. Phoenix Suns, I had down. How about the Sacramento Kings? Like, how much longer can we continue the experiment? Um, Obviously, you bring DeMar DeRozan into the mix. I like the fit. I'll die on the hill that like I'd just rather have DeMar DeRozan than Harrison Barnes because he's so much more versatile offensively. And I just think that the Kings have needed diversity in their offense. They now have another, at least minor engine in their offense, but it's like 35-year-old DeMar DeRozan. He's going to hit a wall at some point, and if it doesn't work out, like they just got to move on at some point. And let's usher in the Devin Carter era. It's about damn time.
Yes.
Just Devin, please fix your shoulder. And then the last team I had on the potential blowups is the Miami Heat. This is a team that could make another run and it wouldn't shock us. And it's also a team that could sort of give up on this era. Maybe the Jimmy Spo relationship has flown too close to the sun once and for all.
Can I throw one more team out there that is maybe a little too soon on the blow up? But let's say Minnesota has a really early exit and realize that the Cat and Rudy pairing actually doesn't work.
Yeah.
Could that be maybe not like a full blow up where it's like a transition blow up where they're turning one of those guys into another guy to pair next to the two that are remaining? But if it's an early loss of them, and if it's clear that these two aren't working together, like the Mobley Allen thing, that could be a one and done.
I mean, you do have the emotional ingredients for a chemical explosion with, the Anthony Edwards, August 5th, Leo, all the pressure from everywhere in the world on Rudy Gobert. Like we said, I mean, the man might need a microphone just to get it all off his chest.
I think that's it. On the Jimmy thing, he has the power to make himself an unrestricted free agent this coming summer. So he has a player option that Miami, if it doesn't go well, it could blow up sooner than you expect.
This has been the Boris Dirk podcast. Ricky G, if you're listening to this, man, we want you on the pod so badly. Can't wait to figure it out. And hopefully going to get some cool guests on as well. Won't be as cool as Andy Gottnick, but we'll do our best. Andy, thanks for coming on. And we'll be back soon. Peace.
Boris Dirk.